Following Joker's monumental success, grossing over $1 billion and earning Joaquin Phoenix an Oscar, both fans and the studio clamored for a sequel, even as the film faced fierce criticism for glorifying Arthur's troubled persona and its controversial portrayal of mental health issues. And while director Todd Phillips always saw Joker as a standalone film, Phoenix wasn't ready to leave the character behind, and after having a dream that saw Joker singing on stage, pitched the idea for a musical sequel. The result was Joker, Folie, Deux, a film that not only incorporated musical numbers that seemed to alienate the film's core audience, but also felt like a deliberate dismantling of the Joker mythos, a move that ignited widespread outrage and left fans wondering, was this movie designed to fail on purpose? To answer that question, let's take a closer look at how Todd Phillips managed to piss off the entire DC fanbase. Feeling like he could no longer make raunchy comedies like Old School and The Hangover in the post-woke era, director Todd Phillips sought to reinvent himself by making a subversive, gritty drama in the vein of Martin Scorsese. However, he was unsure how to give the film mass appeal in order to secure financing. The answer would come to him when looking up at a billboard for a comic book movie, as he realized he could get away with it if he disguised his film as one too. His vision evolved into a character study of the Joker, delving into how a marginalized, bullied clown, scarred by childhood trauma and let down by a failing system, spirals into violence and insanity. And while the film was an enormous hit, it also had plenty of detractors, who felt Joker was simply a shallow remake of Martin Scorsese's The King of Comedy, with a little bit of Taxi Driver thrown in. In a deliberate nod to the film's cinematic roots, Phillips even cast Robert De Niro, who stars as the desperate, untalented would-be comedian in The King of Comedy, as the late-night talk show host in Joker, which was originally played by Jerry Lewis in The King of Comedy. Even Tarantino would criticize this, asking, is this where we are now? Take great movies from the 70s and redo them? Taxi Driver as Joker and Apocalypse Now as Ad Astra? However, while Tarantino said most of the movie was fine, once it reached the talk show scene, you could feel the entire atmosphere in the theater change. He went on to point out that Robert De Niro's character isn't a villain, he's just an abrasive talk show host, much like David Letterman, and he certainly doesn't deserve to die. Yet, Tarantino insisted that while the audience is watching Joker, they're rooting for him to kill Robert De Niro. And if that didn't happen, audiences would have been disappointed and even furious. As a result, Tarantino would praise this entire sequence as subversion on a massive level, as it compelled the audience to crave something so reprehensible that they began to mirror the Joker's own twisted mindset. Other critics expressed concern that a certain segment of America's marginalized young men could be galvanized by Arthur Fleck's descent into madness, viewing it as a vindication of their own feelings of alienation and retribution, almost as if saying, finally, somebody understands me. As a result, they warned that Arthur Fleck becoming the patron saint of incels, combined with the film's sympathetic portrayal of a homicidal maniac, could spark real-world violence and copycat behavior. Todd Phillips would be taken aback by these responses to the film, frustrated that people thought he was glorifying Arthur as a cult hero instead of recognizing the film's true purpose, to condemn violence and expose how the system and society had failed Arthur. So when it came time to do a sequel, rather than charting Arthur's transformation into Batman's nemesis, something the first film seemed to be setting up by ending with the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents, Phillips chose to take aim at the cult-like adoration of the Joker, challenging the notion of him as a heroic figure and exposing the tragic reality behind his myth. However, without a clear cinematic template like The King of Comedy or Taxi Driver to draw from this time around, Phillips had to construct a new narrative from scratch. And a large portion of it revolves around a courtroom drama, where Fleck is put on trial for his crimes in the first film. With many characters returning to provide witness testimony, these scenes act as a meta-commentary, as Arthur and the audience are made to reflect on Joker's actions and frame them within a broader lens than the original film provided. Rather than presenting Arthur as a romanticized figure, which many felt the first film did, the sequel strips away any heroic veneer by highlighting the tragic consequences of his actions. The narrative underscores that his transformation into the Joker is not an act of defiance or brilliance, but a manifestation of systematic failure and untreated mental illness. Off of Phoenix's suggestion that the sequel should be a musical, Phillips briefly considered doing it on Broadway. However, with Warner Brothers eager to capitalize on the first film's billion-dollar success, there was mounting pressure to return with a traditional theatrical sequel. Plus, when the COVID pandemic stalled any further development of a stage production, they pivoted back to cinema while preserving the musical elements that had initially inspired them. However, the choice of doing the film as a quasi-musical seemed to be made to deliberately alienate fans of the first film. As the Joker himself admits, I don't think we're giving the people what they want. In traditional musicals, songs are intricately woven into the story to advance the plot plot and deepen character development. Here, however, the musical sequences merely disrupt the film's pacing, acting more like intrusive commercial breaks than organic storytelling devices, forcing the audience to impatiently wait for the actual story to resume, an irritation perfectly mirrored by Arthur's desperate plea for Lee to stop singing by the film's end. The film's ending also delivers a brutal deconstruction of Arthur Fleck's identity, stripping him of the Joker persona in the most dehumanizing way possible. When it's implied that the guards sexually assault him, it suggests that his Joker persona wasn't an unshakable transformation but something that could be broken, reduced, and even erased through sheer brutality. A meta-commentary on Phillips doing the same to the audience, dismantling the very character he built in the first film. The final blow comes when another inmate kills him, with the implication that this individual, rather than Arthur, was the real Joker all along. This revelation reframes Arthur not as the inevitable villain Gotham feared, but as a tragic, disposable figure, just another failed product of a broken system. In the end, the film strips away any illusion of Arthur being special, reducing him to a mere stepping stone for the legend of the Joker, which will continue on without him. On a meta level, it also foreshadows the inevitable cycle of reinvention, as another director and actor will eventually take over the Joker mantle from Phillips and Phoenix, further proving that the character is bigger than any one interpretation. For a film that was essentially a psychological drama with musical elements, Joker Folie et Deux had an absurdly inflated budget, one that never should have reached such heights. Despite Warner Brothers' initial confidence in a sequel to a billion-dollar hit, the film's staggering costs quickly undermined its potential profitability. A significant chunk of the budget went toward massive upfront paydays, $20 million each for Phoenix and Phillips, and another $12 million for Lady Gaga. To even break even, the film needed to clear $450 million at the box office, an increasingly unrealistic goal. Warner Brothers even attempted to curve costs by suggesting a cheaper filming location in London, where production would have been around 20% less expensive. However, Phillips refused, insisting on shooting in Los Angeles, which kept the budget high. Despite James Gunn and Peter Safran taking control of DC just 2 months before the film went into production, their influence on it was non-existent. Given the film's massive budget, many expected the duo to offer input or guidance, but Phillips allegedly refused to engage them, choosing to liaise only with Warner Brothers. When asked if Gunn and Safran had any involvement, Phillips dismissed the idea, saying, "With all due respect to them, this is kind of a Warner Brothers movie." According to sources close to the production, Phillips was entirely closed off to outside feedback. No one could get through to Todd, one insider claimed. This stubborn approach raised concerns, especially in a genre where ignoring fan expectations often leads to failure. Phillips also refused to test screen the film, so its premiere in Venice marked the first time an audience saw it. And that goes for the film's stars, Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, whose first reactions to seeing it leaked online. According to lip readers, Phoenix called it horrible and suggested that the ending could have been different. Ultimately, audiences and critics shared Phoenix's disappointment. The film was savaged in reviews, rejected by fans, and suffered a disastrous box office performance, becoming one of the year's most notorious failures. It would lead the Razzies with 7 nominations, and even received a dismal D on CinemaScore, worse than Madame Web, and making it the worst CinemaScore grade for a comic book film ever. However, Todd Phillips crafted a film deliberately aimed at those who misunderstood or idolized Arthur Fleck's violent journey in the first film. Quentin Tarantino himself noted strong parallels to his own film, Natural Born Killers, comparing Arthur Fleck and Lee Quinzel to Mickey and Mallory Knox, characters who become dangerously glamorized through the media's fixation on their violent acts. Tarantino remarked, "As much as the first one was indebted to Taxi Driver, this seems heavily indebted to Natural Born Killers." Tarantino saw director Todd Phillips as embodying the Joker himself, spending studio money recklessly and openly mocking comic book fans, Hollywood, and even the studio system at large. In doing so, Phillips created a film that intentionally challenged its own fanbase by turning their expectations into a cruel joke, not unlike the Joker. Even Phillips would say, "The goal of this movie is to make it feel like it was made by crazy people. The inmates are running the asylum." Ironically, while Phillips' first film struggled to rise above a surface-level homage to Scorsese's The King of Comedy, this sequel, brimming with meta-commentary and overt provocation, finally achieved something genuinely bold, proving that art doesn't have to be good or make money, it simply has to start a conversation. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.